Chito struck again. I feel like he just keeps hitting home runs. Chito Vera is doing such a good job with his career that alone is why he and O'Malley need to fight. Like, it's not about resumes or the injury or the previous match or the rankings. I mean, if you're comparing resume, well, this guy's won 14 in a row, and this guy's won 13 in a row. This is about how well they're both doing with their careers. It's how well they're doing with garnering attention, and when they get said attention, making it interesting so that attention returns. And at any rate, Chito is supposed to fight Henry Cejudo in Boston. UFC 292, that's called. And if you care about the numbers of the shows, or if you've memorized the numbers, you're a dork. But at any rate, it is called 292. And why do I bring that up? I'll tell you why I bring that up. Though Henry's not going to be on it, he was. And the history, I'm going to go in a different direction. I'll come back to Chito. The history, from a business standpoint, of the Ultimate Fighting Championship is when you have a feature match. So in this case, 135 pounds and for the belt. When you have a feature, a main event attraction, you will then have a feature attraction, meaning something under the main event, but on the main card, within the same weight class. And the reason you do that is in case you lose your main event, you have two guys that have trained, are prepared, and had hype around them that you can move up. And we haven't done that in a very long time, but we used to do that. We used to see that more and more often, and we would see where that would be a very effective thing. And it was a simple trait, and the UFC did it, and they never spoke about it. And some other organizations didn't pick up on it. I remember organizations, a great one called Affliction. They lost their main event. They went out of business. They never reopened. They lost their main event. They didn't follow. They didn't pick up that trick to have somebody in the same weight that's there, so you have two guys to choose from to preserve the match. I just share with you by example. Because what were they going to do with Henry? I mean, what would be the Henry? Nobody wants to see Henry versus Cheater. I'm not bagging on the fight. No, we don't need that fight. Take that fight, leave that fight. Why'd they book that fight? And I think they booked it because they were either going to grab Chito or they were going to grab Henry and put him back in a championship match. And I think that would have been really fascinating. What if Henry and Aljo would have rematched? And moreover, you have Henry and Aljo that both, by the time this fight goes, which is in August, by the time this fight goes, it was 3 months prior, 90 days prior, they fought each other. So both of them not only got booked at the time this fight goes, not only got booked, had a training camp, had contracts to the media tour, they will have fought within 90 days. And that's just interesting. You two guys, the winner and the loser, both got rebooked. And meanwhile, Islam Makhachev doesn't have an opponent. Israel Adesanya is begging for work. Conor McGregor might be part of the sport, and Jon Jones might be fighting at the end of the year. I mean, I'm just sharing for you. It's a real compliment to those guys. It's a real compliment to Aljo. And you're getting revealed, right? Those numbers always stay private. You're getting revealed that Aljo's numbers trended in a very positive direction. I just want to make that observation for you guys. I'm going to set that down, and I'm going to move right over here to Vera, because Vera was supposed to fight Henry. I never bought it. I don't buy Henry's hurt. I don't know if he said he was hurt. I don't buy Henry's sick. I don't know that he said he was sick. I don't know that Henry fell. I don't know what Henry's reason was. I didn't read it. I don't need to hear. I don't believe it. I never believed Henry was going to fight Chito. Not in a 90-day turnaround. I mean, you got to understand all the things against it, right? We will always use history as our greatest trajectory to the future. So Henry Cejudo, who sat for 3 years, all of a sudden is now only going to sit for 3 months. I mean, he's going to have one of the quickest turnaround times in the company. He'll even beat Aljo by about 15 minutes. I'm going to stop you right there. I never thought they were going to fight. I think he wanted on the card with Dishlavili. This is my own belief. He wanted on the card with Dishlavili, and I think he also had inside information that Dishlavili was going under surgery and wasn't going to show, but it would put him in a backup position and possibly could jump in there Sterling, no matter how unlikely that was. So he took to Twitter and gave it a shot. That's what I think. I'm not looking to bust somebody's game. I'm sharing with you. There's a lot of things here that are happening. They're happening really fast. So what does Marla, I don't like calling him Cheeto. I like calling him Cheeto. What does Chito do? What does Chito Vera do? He calls out Peter Yan. What? What did I just say? What? Nobody's ever called out Peter. What do you mean you called out Peter Yan? You lost your mind? Called out Peter Yan. Called out a guy that just lost. Called out a guy that is clearly the most dangerous guy. If you're looking for a night of pain, Peter Yan's going to bring you more pain than Chito. Even if you think Chito's going to beat him, even if that's where you're hedging your bet, pure pain. He calls out Peter Yan. That is fascinating to me. When can you ever say that? When have you been fascinated by a call-out? When have you cared about an undercard call-out? When have you seen me sit here and make a video on 35-pounders that aren't even the feature match, in a match that isn't happened, it's suggested to happen because a call-out was done against a guy who just lost? You've never heard of that recipe before. I hope that fight happens. And I appreciate that Chito did it. I don't know if Chito beats Yan. I don't know, man. Right? It's, be careful what you ask for. You just might get it. I would imagine. I mean, here would be a different way to ask yourself this. I don't know what your answer would be, but here would be a way to ask yourself, what's a more difficult fight, Henry Cejudo or Yan? And for those of you that said Cejudo, I don't think you're bullish on that. I don't think you'd bet the house on that. And for those of you that said Yan, I don't think you're bullish. I don't think you'd bet their house. They're very different styles, and they're both a very difficult fight, but for very different reasons. Striker versus grappler. Chito doesn't care. Chito took the Olympic wrestler and he traded him for the kickboxing champion overnight. That's interesting to me. And there's things that happen there. Chito's not looking for any of them. Chito's looking for a fight. That's all he's like. There's nothing more than that. But there are byproducts. Let's say that Chito gets booked on the card. Let's just say it's against Yan. It won't matter who it's with. It will not matter, because if anything happens to the main event, it's now not a matter. I'm going to say Yan for the sake of my story. It's not going to be a matter if this Chito or Yan get elevated. This person is out. Chito is now the backup fighter. I mean, I'll tell you that guy right now. At a minimum, Chito Vera is now the backup fighter at 292 in Boston. At a minimum. He may get an opponent. He may have a fight that night. I'm telling you right now, whether it's ever stated or not stated, he's now the backup fighter. He is one moment of good luck in his direction and one moment of a bad luck in another direction from being in a main event for the title. I think that's very interesting. And he only did it by being a competitor. He only did it by being true to himself. He only did it by being the same guy now that he's interesting and he's a top name as he was when he was hungry and trying to climb his way up. See, that's the difference between all of them. That right there is the difference. They're hungry and they want it. And the second they think they don't want it anymore, now they want to protect it. This is very normal. I don't begrudge people. A piece of that in me myself. Man, this is just a human element you've got to fight. I just am noticing for you that Chito's not doing it. I hope he never does it. I can at least tell you he's not doing it yet. Chito Vera versus Yan. I like the idea. Chito Vera officially our backup fighter for sure.